Please, 7:30. Any apologies for absence?
No.
None. Thank you. Any declarations of interest?
No.
Members? No. Thank you. Item 3, Chairman's report and urgent items. I have one, which is an update on the Bradford Springs Volunteers headquarters. Just to recap, a planning application for the new HQ building was submitted during mid-March. In early April, the Environment Agency objected to the application on 2 grounds. Number 1, the location of the building in regard to it being within flood zone 3B, and 2, unsatisfactory flood risk assessment submitted with the application. A representative here spoke to the Environment Agency and they agreed to withdraw objection 1 because they'd already approved it on the previous occasion. So this is a left-hand, right-hand exercise. And to withdraw objection 2, subject to satisfactory flood risk assessment being submitted. This was needed to be updated in line with the Environment Agency's new requirements adopted since the flood risk assessment was completed during early 2016. So that's been done, updated and resubmitted to St Albans Planning Department. On the 9th of May, the Environment Agency acknowledged notification of the updated flood risk assessment and informed us that they would respond to SADC with regards to it within their standard statutory 21-day period. As of yet, they haven't responded, and so their objections stand until such time as they withdraw them. They don't have to respond until the end of May, but we are expecting them to do so. So the Planning Department at District delayed the planning application decision until the 6th of June in order to allow a new flood risk assessment to be submitted and for the Environment Agency to respond to it. So that's where we've got to, which I think is reasonably satisfactory. I think we still think we're going to get planning approval on the 6th of June. That's where we've got to. Okay, nothing else? Any other urgent items?
No, Chair.
No, thank you. Any public questions in accordance with Standing Order 22? You will note we've adopted the new standing orders, so instead of 64 or whatever it was, it's now 22. One of those. Minutes. 5.1 to confirm the minutes of the Environment Committee. You notice we've changed our name to Community Services. Held on the 15th of March 2017. I think they've all been circulated. Anybody have any questions, or can I sign those as a true record?
True record.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Well, the Chair's saying, can I just say that that thing's stop flashing on? The light in the cabinet was flashing on and off. Okay. But now it's off. No, that's on. You're right, it is flashing on and off. Yeah. It's a bit different.
Well, the tube's finished, I think. Yes.
Yeah.
I'm not sure which switch does what.
Thank you.
Okay. 5.2, to receive the minutes of the allotments working party held on the 8th of February, which are in our pack. Anybody have any comments or anything they want to raise on that? Okay, so if we can just receive those then.
There was one recommendation, Chair.
Yep.
225.1.2, meetings are held between the town clerk and individual allotment societies to discuss the current agreement and make any recommendations for amendment. I can confirm that those meetings have been undertaken, and that a report will be coming to this committee in July.
Thank you. Any other points, or just receive those? Okay, thanks very much. 5.3, to receive the minutes of the Harpenden in Bloom Working Party held on the 9th of March 2017, which are included in our pack.
Yes, I was going to say, just as a point of information, I've only just found this out in the last day or two. It's looking as if the summer planting day will be delayed. There's an issue, I guess it's down to the weather.
Oh, really?
Well, I said so. I can't think of any other reason why some of the plants aren't ready yet, and some have been unavailable, so substitute a different colour. So it's looking as if today will have to be rescheduled. I've asked if, as far as possible, they can encourage them for the 3rd of June. After that, it gets extremely difficult and will have to be on a weekday because Scotland can't.
Could I ask, is it possible to ask them if they could remove the old bedding?
They will do so, I think.
Oh,
Well, I only say that because when we drove down tonight, I noticed the bull roundabout had been emptied.
Ah, okay. Yeah, because they're looking really fast.
Yes, no, but I think they've started doing that because I noticed that had been emptied.
Yes, I noticed it was empty last Friday.
Yeah. I'll have a walk round at the weekend and see if they've emptied everything.
Okay, any other points, or I'll just receive those? Okay, thank you. And finally, 5.4. Yep, a recommendation, I think. Local nature zone. Is that the next one, or what did we?
Yes, that's the one.
Okay. Right. So we're looking at the local nature reserve working party minutes. There is a resolution. 4 points. Well, it's actually on page 12, but it's 4.2. Which is resolved to recommend to the Environment Committee that the storage container be retained for use by the volunteers after the HQ is completed. They apparently need the extra storage space, that's what I've been told.
The town council had got plans that they were going to use it for our own storage. As you are aware, we've got 2 containers already up at Townsend Nurseries, and obviously the redevelopment of the depot. We're going to be liaising with the volunteers about this request to keep the storage container because the town council would like to use it. Yes.
Okay.
Thank you. I'd just like to say it seems a bit ironic that I thought the whole point in the development of the headquarters was actually to provide storage, because that's what had actually been lost rather than just anything else. So the fact that they're now asking to keep the storage container seems a little bit strange to me. And if the town council feels that they need it, I would question why we're building all-encompassing facility for them, and there's not enough storage space. I would have thought there's something wrong with the design if that's not the case.
Or they've expanded and they've got more stuff. I don't know. I wasn't I haven't been involved in those discussions, so I don't know.
And do we know where they're planning to house the container?
I think the plan is to move it from where it is at the moment,
I guess
further down towards where the...
Well, definitely, because we're not expecting it to stay on.
No.
Won't be on Marcus Lane, but we'll have to move it.
If you look over the page at the bottom of page 11, Baptist Venturing volunteers requested the storage container is kept to house materials and equipment for the work parties. It was suggested that it could be located at the back of the HQ. But, there is storage, I understand, in the plans for the new depot, so quite why the request has come, that they need additional storage. So I can't.
So what should we do, defer this one?
Russ, for more clarification?
Yes, I think we should.
Does that sound okay?
Yes, I think we should.
Okay, any other points? Yeah.
Can I make one up there?
Yes.
Just a query on the, it's got point 3, the minutes. There was an amendment that it should read, a meeting should be considered between allotments, BSP and HTC. That was dated the 11th of August, so I'm not really aware of anything about that. So has that happened, or is it, what's that in relation to?
I don't know what the minutes from the 11th of August related to. Can I email you and? Yes.
That'd be great, thank you.
Any other points on that one? Okay, thank you very much. Received that. Second resolution in 4.3. The People and Wildlife Officer to obtain 3 quotes to drill 2 new boreholes. And the People and Wildlife Officer report to the next Environment Committee, that will be Community Services Committee, of course, the process and financial implications of drilling new boreholes. Now, from what I recall, we were going to try and clear out these portions, weren't we? But there's a difficulty.
Yes, you will be aware that obviously we cleared out one of the boreholes, but the other 2 are blocked and broken. However, we are in the process of liaising with the Environment Agency about an extraction licence in order to actually to draw water up from the aquifer. And as you will be aware, apart from today, we've had quite a dry winter and spring. So we're uncertain about how the Environment Agency will consider an application to draw more water from the aquifer. So I think that item should be deferred, Chair, until a decision from the EA has been received.
Sounds quite sensible. Yes. Okay with that? Okay. The last resolution, 4.6. The People and Wildlife Officer to forecast budget spend for next year to see what can be allocated to signage, interpretation this financial year.
May I add that in 2016-17 there was a new budget item of £8,000 for interpretation boards. Now, some of that money has been allocated to new boards at Lydecker Park. However, there is an underspend. I can't confirm what the figure is because the officer who's dealing with that wasn't in the office today. However, any underspend will be transferred to the reserves. So there is some funds already allocated to some new interpretation boards down at Batford.
Okay. So we'll get that probably, next meeting?
Yes.
Okay. That's it, isn't it? No other points on this? Right. Now we've got the action tracker. This is on page 15. I think we're going to consider that later in case we have an extra report on that. So that's covered. Forward work programme is on page 17. Does anybody have any comments on that? Anything you want to add or subtract?
Just to clarify, I read somewhere about doing work on drainage on the common. So is that
Yes,
forward planning,
we'll come on to that in a
but separate to the premises forthright?
yes. Okay. Right, on to the officers' reports. Terms of reference for working parties reporting to the Community Services Committee. See the report starting on page 19. Does anybody have any comments on Batford Springs, allotments, Harpenden in Bloom, Christmas Carnival, any of those things?
Tiny update on the terms of reference for the allotments working party.
Yep.
The point 7, it's still got environment committee.
Thank you.
Yep.
On the,
Oh, thank you, Mike. And sorry, terms of reference for Harpenden in Bloom, point 2, to hold at 2. Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay. Did you have a comment, Michael?
yes, in terms of reference for the Christmas Carnival one, one of the biggest things we do is the procession, and it's not mentioned in the under item 4 of those. You've got charity stores, Santa's Grotto, Fairground Rise, live performances, but I think the procession ought to be.
Procession? Okay, no question. Any other comments? Okay, let's move on. Right, 6.4, access to comment. Now, I've got some extra material. This has been going around a bit, so I'm just going to recap developments, but just to give you an idea of what we're looking at. These are two sections of the horse ride, and you can see what condition they're in. I'll just pass these around. They're very, they're larger in colour and better than the ones in the pack. So you can see it's a bit of a quagmire here. The problem with these parts is obviously they get used by horses, bicycles, as well as pedestrians. And where you get, a big mess like that, rather than treading in it, of course, people travel around the outside, which basically expands it. And I was up there today, and I've been on previous occasions when it's been like this, and it's not very good. It doesn't encourage people to use the common. So I'll just circulate those. Now, what is proposed to be done is to use material which starts off a bit like this. It's sort of granite chipping. Just pass this round in a minute. And it compacts it down, and it looks pinky to start with, but as it weathers, it looks like that. And this is the same material which has been agreed to be used at Marquis Lane.
Which is installed at Marquis Lane, yeah.
Which has been installed there.
Mhm.
Now, back in 2010, it was agreed that we would do, this is the Environment Committee 10th of February 2010. 10th of February 2010. It was agreed that consultation will be taking place with local stables and horse riders, etc., and that we submit an application to the Secretary of State, because you obviously have to do that for work on the common, to resurface the horse ride in the locations identified, and then there's some other stuff about funding and enhancements and so forth. And that was approved, and you have to go, you go through the tendering process, but what you have to do is to approach the planning inspectorate for restricted works to the common land under section 38 of the Commons Act, and they have to approve it. And in addition to that, we have to get planning approval from St Albans Planning Department for minor works to be undertaken. So it's quite an exercise to go through, and we are going to be consulting with various people, riding stables, British Horse Society, the County Council because of the rights of way, There's a commoner with rights, countryside management services, English heritage, Natural England, and the Open Spaces Society. So I have to go through all of that lot. And that's been done before in respect of the 2010 agreed improvements to the horse ride. I don't think we've had any complaints from any residents about the work that's been done. So essentially what is being proposed here is that we do the same again in various locations. Now, the question of drainage and so forth has arisen in the past, and that could help. But the problem is these footpaths, as you know, I've seen myself this afternoon, are really quite worn down, and you've got to replace the material which is worn away. If you drained it, fine, you know, you'd end up with a sort of a dry trench as opposed to a wet trench, but it'd still be a trench, you know, a small trench, because of the wear that takes place along it. So I think really what we're looking at is, yep, thank you, which is granite chippings, as I've mentioned on this stuff I've circulated, which is, it looks like that. It starts off like that and it looks like that when it's weathered a bit. So if I could just circulate those around for people to have a look at. And what we're looking at is areas which are marked on here. That's probably a bit clearer than your. This is the previous one, for example. So these are the areas that have been done with the granite chipping marked on here. And this is the quotation that was obtained in 2015. The idea is to camber the footpath a bit so that the water drains off it. Essentially. So that's what's proposed. What is proposed on circulate that for people to have a look at. This idea. So basically that's what's proposed. Give everybody a few minutes just to have a look at the pictures.
Yeah, sorry, apologies, I wasn't here at the last meeting, so I missed when this came up. About the drainage issue then, and I appreciate you said it will be a trench. I'm really not worried about the dry trench. You know, I can appreciate the problem is muddy and wet, and maybe people don't want to walk through the mud, but I would argue that people walking around the common wouldn't mind that actually, but I don't think there's any issues with the dry trench. But I thought that the drainage report was coming to this meeting.
Yeah, I don't think, and correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think they've got time to do that.
I think
point of order, it's a bit out of order to bring a report like this when this committee asked over 6 months ago for that report to come to us. It is treating members of this council with contempt.
Any other comments?
I think we should defer it then. Anything without the report, I don't see how we can be asked to look at it. Right?
I can't see myself how drainage is going to improve already damaged footpaths. I think that's where I'm coming from. Harry?
Yeah, from the last meeting and the previous meeting, you'll know that I'm very much opposed to this. I feel very passionate about this, so forgive me for going on a little bit. The first couple of points here was that it would benefit members of the public who use the common for air and exercise, benefit to the public for air and exercise. If you're running on the common in the winter or spring, then, I'm sorry, but mud is part and parcel of a natural environment. When people go, for instance, cross-country horse riding or running in the winter, they expect to get muddy on their hooves, they expect to get muddy on their boots. they wouldn't think to alter the natural environment. If people don't want to get muddy whilst running on a natural area, I suggest they run on the pavement or go to the gym or go to an athletics track. Similarly, with people walking, they should expect fields and a common space to get waterlogged. This is nature after all. Then we talked about how there are access, journey time and enjoyment factors here. In the winter, who would walk along a field to cut out journey time? This is just plain obvious common sense that you wouldn't do this. If there's a field somewhere I might walk home or to a destination and would save my journey time, yes, I would walk there in the summer. But in the winter months, I just wouldn't. And who would walk through the common in a suit and trousers to save journey time or for better access? I see this as very much a common sense issue here. The footpaths have got waterlogged. It's the natural environment, it gets muddy. Thirdly even, I do not think that we should be resurfacing any parts of a natural common. Remember, this is a natural common maintained by man. It's not a man-made park. Moreover, the total cost of this is just £14,916 plus VAT, which comes to overall £17,899, which I think is a lot of money. I've spoken to many people, albeit it might not be a YouGov poll of 1,000 people in Harpenden, but I've spoken to a lot of people who do not favour this at all, and they think that you should use the money to repair pavements instead where people actually do work. And it seems that the people that are complaining about it, the people that ride horses, well, forgive me if I'm wrong, but when horses ride, they churn up and they make it worse anyway. Now, it's not like they do it just once a year for an organised event. That would be unfair to say that they churn up the mud. But they use it quite regularly, and as a result, they will churn it up. So I fundamentally think we should not be doing this, and I think we should be throwing this out.
Well, several points. First of all, of course, commons originally are all man-made environments. They're not natural environments. And if you were reversing a common to how it originally was, you'd of course be cutting down huge swathes of trees. But that's by the by. That's how it is now. Part of this is about access, and you seem to think that obviously only fit young people can walk on it, because other people who might not be able to cope with muddy paths obviously shouldn't be allowed to go there because it's being impinged on the natural environment. It also, of course, unfortunately does rain in this country in the summer, so you can't just assume it's going to be wet in the winter. I think it blends in quite well. There is, I'm not saying it's exactly a requirement, but one of the things we are looking at is to increase access to our open spaces for the enjoyment of all, not decrease access.
I hear the argument about access here, but I think we need to be quite realistic. This is not about saying it should just be for the enjoyment of fit, able-bodied young men. I think that's actually quite a cheap remark. What I would say is that this is actually about maintaining a place that has been the same for well over 100 years. If you want to go into semantics of whether or not it's a man-made environment, man does not make mud. Man does not make grass. You could say that whenever it rains, I notice we've got words like damaged. The rain damages anywhere that isn't actually hard surfacing, according to this. We're talking about repairing surfaces. Actually, you can't repair mud. You can't repair what was a natural track. That's disingenuous language. In terms of resurfacing, you can't resurface what has been there, whether man has been looking after that square inch of ground or not. You can't repair what has been the same surface for thousands of years before we were even there. As you know, I was extremely concerned, like Councillor Gillan, with this when this was discussed. I did, as promised to the chairman, I went to visit over the Easter holidays on 2 occasions. Once when it was moderately wet, where there was one path, I admit, that I did skirt around the edge, and most paths were passable, and once where it was quite dry. The fact of the matter is that this is cyclical. This has been happening since I was a little boy. No one has said, oh, heavens forfend, there is mud, therefore we must put hard standing down. If we did, are we proposing actually that the people who hold the Hearts show would be more sensible to put AstroTurf down because it would prevent the thoroughfares of the Hearts show being waterlogged and mud-ridden when it rains heavily, which it often is at the Hearts show? Are we suggesting perhaps that every single park where there isn't a hard path, we should be turning that into AstroTurf or some kind of gravel surface. The whole point about this is we have beautiful areas where it is absolutely right and proper for access, that we expand the width of paths. That's what we should be spending our money on, where we should be looking at the damage done by tree roots to paths. For instance, a path from this site over into the centre of town has for years not been wide enough. It's damaging the path there, and that's a matter of access here. I think it is actually quite wrong to suddenly suggest, and this hasn't been mentioned in the two previous occasions this report has come to this committee, suddenly suggest, oh, if you oppose this, you must be against disabled people enjoying nature. Well, that's illogical. That's like suggesting that somebody in a wheelchair would want to see everywhere with a ramp or a hard surface path, because that's what this is. And there's been an avoidance of this in here, so people don't necessarily see that coming. I've seen those photos now, I know what this is. It's a hard surface. If we're suggesting that people who are disabled would want to see that happen everywhere, it is a very sad fact of life that sometimes people who are in a wheelchair or have limited mobility are not always able to get around as they used to. And I don't think anybody should sort of poo-poo that. But I also know that many elderly people who have lived in this town all of their lives, for 40, 80 years in some occasions, have enjoyed that common as it is, whether they be using a walking frame or walking sticks, because it's a place where they can get away from an urban environment. It is what makes this town special. When I first became a town councillor, it was a creed amongst all town councillors. Certainly I know that it was one held by Councillors Weaver and Kent when I first arrived, that it was a privilege to be a town councillor because it made you a custodian of the common. It's always been a special thing that we have a lovely mix of green spaces, beautifully kept beds, ornamental beds, a park, greens, and then the more rugged area of the common. It's a matter of pride for this council that we have higher level stewardship agreements on areas like Eastmoor Park and on the Hayfield, areas where for the first time in decades we have seen wild heather coming and even wild orchids. Having that breadth, as I say, has always been something of a creed, whether there have been Conservatives, Liberal Democrats or Independents on this council. It surely strikes me that we are failing in our responsibility to maintain that balance and mix. By allowing this, we're spending money simply to tick a box that we needn't tick. What is far more important is looking at the long-term environmental heritage of this town, and I would suggest that by allowing this through, not only are we wasting money, not only are we actually getting into a demand which doesn't exist. I have been sure to talk to as many people as I can about this, including 2 former councillors and 1 former mayor, who, and I quote, said, "You would be mad to do this, and people would be outraged." If we do that, then quite frankly, it is an act of environmental vandalism and not an act of a Harpenden Town Councillor.
Yes, but Michael, I'll just take you in a minute. Could I just say, first of all, we've done this before, as I mentioned earlier. This was on the Environment Committee the 16th of February 2010. So some areas have been resurfaced already. The horse ride was created in the 1960s, a permissive horse ride, in recognition of the historic relationship and to balance the recreational needs for growing population. So this route dates from 1960, just my first comments. Michael.
Thank you, Chair. I totally agree with Dan on the basis that we're so lucky here to have this common. We've also got the park, and all this green space is wonderful. I also noted on Mayor's comment that we need maximum access to this, but have we got it? I today, this morning, was given a lift and I walked yards and yards in the rain, Ayers End Lane, Golf Course, and down to Cross Lane. I didn't go to all of it because I couldn't. It wasn't easy. I mean, I've got 2 sticks. I'm not going to make a plea for the disabled or even a wheelchair user, because it's not appropriate for them to stay for a wheelchair. But I had to step off the pathway several times because of the quite deep puddles and things in there, more than puddles. I actually slipped in the mud. I didn't fall, but I was close to it. There are lots of people like me who are using 1 or 2 sticks, and they're not necessarily fully disabled, but So, please don't go down the path, if I may say so, of only catering for young and fit people, runners and others, and cyclists, and ignoring just the less able. I'm not asking for, super disabled access and that sort of super things for them, but it is very difficult at the moment. On the positive side, we really should be encouraging more people, especially mothers and fathers, and I've got lots of grandchildren, to take their children away from roadsides and walks and go into the common and see the beauties of the common, the natural things that happen there, and get away from roadside walks. If it's muddy and things, they'll go to the park. It's less muddy, and I know that's happened. So it's not a question of concreting or tarmacking over things. I looked at these things here, and I saw, it was difficult to tell for me because I didn't what was actually had been repaired now and what had been or recently or over the years, but there were certain bits which were absolutely awful, and I think that that particular picture there, it fits in with the natural environment. So, Chair, I think this is money that will be well spent if it encourages greater use of our fantastic common.
Just a quick comment. We're not actually planning to put the path down the entire common. I mean, you would think from the comments that we were planning to do this to every single bit of path on the common, which we're not merely the permitted waterfront. It will then have to go through a considerable number of stages and a considerable number of bodies that would take a very strong interest in the management and the care of the common to deal with, and if they wish to disagree and say so, then they can, and we would have to revisit it. And to suggest that councillors who take a different view from another councillors don't care is simply offensive. I've had a good thinking about this. It's not easy, but looking at those pictures, that to me looks as if it blends in very nicely, and it does give greater access. And it's the fact that we've done it before, and it's part of one thing, the whole permissive horse ride. So I can see if this was new, and if it was a different surface, that we'd be doing something detrimental to the common. But I think, having looked at that that's going to be a positive addition to the common. And no more than that, really. I think it's a good idea.
Thank you. I'd just like to say, if this is the same material used for the Marquis Lane meadow, I was appalled at how much plastic and strange material was visible on all the sides running through there after it was laid. So no disrespect to whichever contractor did it, but that sort of material all over the common I don't think is acceptable. I have to admit I used the path at Marquis Lane because I know that the Backford Springs volunteers like members of the public to use the path, so they don't actually walk on the meadow, and I respect them for that. However, I also used the Nicky line all winter, and it was muddy, it was wet, it was frozen sometimes, it had cyclists, horse riders, people walking of all ages, and a lot of us did get pretty muddy, and there's a lot of families that actually like getting muddy. I don't think we should make concrete areas just to entice families to be out in the natural environment. I think they should be in the natural environment. So actually, even though you say this material has been used in other areas, and obviously I wasn't in the last meeting, so I didn't realise I was meant to go out and have a look at all the sites, but actually I didn't like that material. I don't think it looks attractive, and the fact that we're bringing plastic products into the environment is not acceptable in my view.
I don't think there'll be plastic products.
How do we know? There shouldn't have been any in Marquis Lane.
I was going to say, I'm just looking at this, mentioned granite, the top dressing. There's no indication of plastic.
There shouldn't be.
I would agree with you.
Yes,
We wouldn't want to
I agree with you.
introduce something like
There
that.
shouldn't be.
No, it shouldn't.
But there's, I know they're accredited contractors, etc. But I don't know how materials like that get into the mix. But
Okay. I've got Dan and then Pat. Dan.
Thank you. Certainly I don't wish to offend colleagues who like to come to a different conclusion. That's what a democracy is, but I think it is reasonable to suggest that, in my opinion, this would be an act of environmental vandalism. I'm allowed to have that opinion. It isn't impugning the motive of any individual member of this council. I feel very strongly about this, first of all because this is not simply resurfacing an area that's already been surfaced. It is a radical expansion. Look at the maps and these figures, look at the areas that have not had this kind of a surface before. It is a different kind of surface, it is a radical change. We cannot get away from that, that is a fact. On top of that, what might be offensive is to suggest that those people who are against this just want to have the common for the preserve of the young, able and fitter body. That is simply wrong. My grandparents have walked around that common from when I was a toddler, and they enjoyed walking around that common until their death. The fact of the matter is that sometimes, as Councillor Martin said, sometimes people enjoy going to these places because it isn't exactly neat and tidy. It doesn't fit to a trimmed, manicured image of the town that we have in other places, which is sometimes appropriate. One of my earliest memories is of being a toddler in Ashridge Forest and walking through Ashridge Forest if it's been raining a lot. And I appreciate that Councillor Weaver said he walked there and found it difficult. I would find it equally as difficult, which I think speaks volumes about Councillor Weaver's ability to navigate these paths with 2 sticks and my inability to do it without. But that's because it's raining today. We've had the highest volume of rain today than we have in the last 2 months. That's logical. It's going to be raining. It's going to be hard. That doesn't take an actual visit to the common to work out that's going to be the case for any family or a person of any age. So, suggest that perhaps just because somewhere is muddy, I wouldn't have had the experience of, for instance, one of my Wellington boots being completely sucked away in a quagmire of mud in Ashridge Forest. It's so badly, in fact, I think we lost the boot, and I had to be carried back on my grandfather's shoulders. Well, quite. But I think we have to be very clear here. I have spoken to a lot of residents, and I've said to them, look, is this something that you think would be good? Am I the person who's perhaps being too suspicious here? And everybody said, including most people I spoke to were well over the age of 40, some of whom would be described as pensioners. They said, why would you do that? If you don't like that kind of thing, don't go to the common. We have plenty of areas where you can walk on a hard-turning path. The other thing I find here is that we're not just at risk of branding Councillor Gillam and I just as, you know, the young Turks who want to keep it as a preserve for the young. We're at risk of being profoundly patronising to people who are elderly and do walk maybe with mobility aids and things like that. So I do stick by my comments, and I have to say that I will respect. It looks quite clear that a majority of councillors in this committee are happy for this to go through. I am not, but I do accept democracy. But I would like a recorded vote with the names of councillors recorded, because when, as I suspect, people do get up in arms, and we've got to bear in mind, this is going to the Secretary of State. If it wasn't a serious thing, it wouldn't be. When people do complain, I want to be able to turn around and say, well, I take on board what you said, but I did vote against this. And I think that is reasonable for Councillor Gillam and I to ask.
I would just like to say that a common is a common and a park is a park. We do not want concreted areas on a common. I have walked from here across the triangle there, outside, down to the main road many a time, and I've even had to come off the concrete to let a passerby go by with a pram, a child in a pram. Okay, you step aside onto the grass. So in a common, you step aside onto the grass. That's what it's there for goodness sake. That's all I've got to say.
But just to clarify, we have done this before.
Yep.
But not in these areas.
Not in these areas.
But we've done it on Foss Ride.
A tiny amount hidden from the public view by a screen of trees.
And we haven't had the drainage report from this.
True, but that would be, I think we've covered that. haven't we?
Yeah, but we've deferred everything else this evening.
Deferred it.
No, there isn't. 3.8, drainage is a separate issue and is part of a wider piece of work that needs to be undertaken by officers. A specific report will be brought back on drainage at a future meeting. Presumably that's drainage in the whole common.
I think it is worthy that we've had, you know, I was having a very keen debate on this. This is, as Councillor Dan said, you know, we're going quite far, and I think we should. It just shows the seriousness of it we've taken, even if they have to. And I respect everyone's views, everyone who's put their individual views down. I respect yours and the way you've expressed them. I take no offence from it seems like it's different, that I've got a different view, and it might have been implied that I had, but no, I think that comes back to me, it's just we want to have, we've got this wonderful common, I want to see more and more people use it and to enjoy it and see the natural beauties and things that there are on there, and I think this accessibility thing is very important, and I appreciate all the things the Council said about mud and everything else. It's a mixture, but I just think that the more accessibility we've got onto this common, the better it is for us.
I was just going to say, finally, if you like, there is a backstop on this, which, you know, if it gets go ahead, that it then does have to go through natural, I'll leave track of what they call them, the natural England now, or they change their name. It is natural England, and so forth. So there's, if you like, a backstop.
Okay, well, I think we've discussed this thoroughly. I suppose it's a question of going to the vote now for further recommendation, which is 2.1.1. The committee is asked to recommend to Corporate Policy and Finance the release of earmarked reserves to value of £14,000 for further resurfacing works to the access routes shown in figures 6 to 8, using the same specification of path as in 2013. So, can we vote?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Could you note my request for the names of members voting for and against being recorded?
That's good note. Yes. So, record the vote, those in favour? Okay. So
You're in favor?
got the names?
Thank you.
Against? Okay, so the motion's carried. Or the
Could I
recommendation's
just
carried.
ask,
Yes.
is it normal for the chair to vote?
Yes, I think so. I think a chair is allowed to vote on the motion and also has a casting vote. I think that's mine.
I thought it was usually if it was any requirement.
No, just Councillor Martin, to let you know, so that, for instance, in Stevens, the mayor often would only vote when a casting vote is needed, but occasionally they don't. They vote on a motion because the mayor has the right to do so.
I'm just referring to how we usually
Yes, it would be
deal with
the
issues rather
same.
than
Well, it would be the
council.
same, but there'd be the sort of similar rules right away.
Okay. Right. Let's move on to 6.5. Water safety reviews. So that's the next on page 43. So, would you like to say a few words on this one?
Yes, previous members of the committee will be aware that last summer we implemented some safety measures down at Batford Springs, the introduction of some throw lines and some water buoyancy aids, but it was considered that perhaps a further review of safety matters on our common land and also at Batford would be appropriate. Hence the report was commissioned, and members obviously have a copy of that report here.
Yeah. Does anybody have any comments on the report or observations?
Yeah.
Harry?
On page 41, page 7 of the report, so 42, so yeah, 41 to 42, it's talking about railings, where railings are protecting fall from height into water. Intermediate railings are essential to prevent persons toppling into water, including young children learning to ride bicycles. I'm sorry, but why would any responsible parent teach their kids how to cycle by a river? I think the assumptions here are a little bit strange that we'd have people learning how to ride a bike right next to a river. And secondly, about the stepping stones providing the good quality handrails, for me that was all part of the fun going down to the stepping stones down to Baptist Springs as a toddler, kid, child, whatever you want to call it. So I think we'd be removing that, and I think that's a gross kind of form of the nanny state by doing that. So I don't think that's very good. Yeah.
Okay, so, sorry, just to take that point, so can you just refer me to the specifics? So it's on page 41, is it?
Well, it starts on 41, the sentence I read out started on 41 and then finished on 42.
So this is the railings comment?
Yeah, the railings, where they're talking about railings and they're talking about intermediate railings are essential to prevent persons toppling into the water. We've got railings already that are what you could call lower down than intermediate. And the reason quoted is to prevent young children who are learning how to ride a bicycle from toppling into the water. But I never learned to ride a bicycle right next to a river. That's just common sense. If any parent, it's a bit like saying we should have a railing right next to a footpath that's next to a motorway in case kids are learning to ride bicycles there. You just wouldn't do it. So I think if they've got another good reason for putting intermediate railings in, then so be it. But that reason there is not a good reason.
Okay. I'll just come to you in a second. If we don't do these safety things, is the council liable? Are we exposing ourselves to liability?
We should take the advice of the organisation who obviously we commissioned a report from. So yes, there could be issues.
I thought there might be. Dan?
If I was a barrister trying to defend the town council on that account, I would be laughing all the way to the courtroom. To be honest with you, the town council is liable if it installed the river, as I think geology and tectonic plates and rainfall are responsible for the river there. We're not liable for something that we didn't put in there. It just happens to fall within our parish. Councillor Gillen is absolutely spot on. I think this is the nanny state. It's urbanising a place that is actually quite nice and peaceful. And half the thrill is actually that they aren't there. In fact, so I wouldn't want them taken away, and I think it is a good thing. I remember being a very young boy in Cubs, running backwards and forwards during wide games on the bridge across the brook at the ponds down near the barland trees, without anybody falling in, despite some people's best attempts to push each other in. I think we've got water safety items. We've got, for instance, down by the weir, we've got buoyancy devices. We have signs saying beware. And I think there is also a good point here, and that's there is such a thing as parental responsibility. You cannot say that just because the world hasn't been covered in cotton wool everywhere, that that somebody is liable just because it's there. Otherwise, we'd be saying highways are liable for having very hard lampposts that people might just bump into if they didn't look where they're going. Where does that kind of nonsense end? The fact Rossborough said this doesn't surprise me, but I agree with Harry. I think we should just ignore it.
Thank you, yes. It does actually say where railings are protecting the fall from heightened water, intermediate railings are essential to prevent persons toppling in, including young children. So it's not saying you need to put railings everywhere, it's just saying where you have them, you should have an intermediate rail. So actually I don't think that's a bad point at all. And it does say regarding the narrow path, stepping stones, etc., if these routes are being encouraged, ensure the risk is obvious. So if we're not going to put hand railings in, consider clearly visible signage. So it is giving an alternative, and I think that's fair play that we've said we'll put in clear signage to say you're here at your own risk, and it is actually only saying to put the extra bar on the railings that are already there. So I don't think they're going as far as saying, we insist you install these, they're giving us options.
I could just say, otherwise you'd end up having to do it to every stretch of river in the country. But what I was going to ask is, perhaps I'm being extremely sick or being affected by anaesthetic, but I don't quite understand what is meant in item 6, a review of controls on the basis of behavioural observation and incident reported during periods of heavy rain, extreme cold, darkness and school holidays and device. Perhaps I'm missing something, but I don't quite understand what they're suggesting. They say we should sort of have some, somebody down there at night will try and shut it off. What are they suggesting or asking?
Yeah, I looked at that and thought that was a little bit ambiguous as well.
Oh, good, I'm glad it's not just me. I mean,
No.
Yeah.
what are they suggesting? That somehow you shut it off?
No, we would get Councillor Gillum down there.
Yeah.
To observe.
Yeah.
No, I just seems to me that's meaningless.
Also, just picking up that the last point on that section about there's some netting that's been installed. So I'm guessing that might be either by us, is it, or the volunteers perhaps,
I think it's been
buying to stop it. So I think that is a very fair point actually to remove that.
Okay, is that point 10 on page 43?
No, it's on page 42.
42.
The first box that we were referring to. It's the next to last little paragraph there. In the section near the ford, there are places near fishing pegs. Obviously, it's, I guess, to try and stop people entering the river to fish. There's been some netting, whether it's trying to protect the bank or stop the fishing, but
right, okay.
good point.
Yes, good.
Okay. Well, thank you for your comments.
Sorry, could I just
Yeah,
ask,
please.
have we got any idea of cost?
No.
Not at this stage.
It's item 4, the cost will be met by the existing council budget.
But if we don't know what the costs are,
Unless they are extreme. It could be met from the existing council budget.
is that set aside for this particular
No, it would be,
initiative?
it would be ongoing maintenance budget.
Okay.
I mean, do we feel we need more time to consider this? Do people want to
I think we
spend?
could do some costing.
Yes,
Okay.
definitely. Yes, we should do with costings.
Yeah. I suppose the costing really depends on what we decide to do to some extent.
It's just there might be quite a lot of signage, and as we've already found out, it's quite expensive. So I'm not saying that we shouldn't do any of the things that they're suggesting.
Yeah. What was the next meeting of this committee? 5th of July. Okay. I mean, is there anything really urgent in here that you think is
No, Chair. Especially with the water levels being as low as they are at the
a
moment.
major risk that, something nasty could happen between now and the 5th of July?
No, Chair.
All right, well, what we'll do then, subject to your approval, is we'll defer this one. One of people looked through the recommendations and the Roscoe report, and if anything else occurs to you, chip in to and we'll try and get some estimates of costs for some of the items at least. Is that satisfactory?
I think so, because I think, sorry, Chair, I think what Councillor Gillum has said is absolutely right. We can go on and on. You could never end this thing of hazard or risk prevention. It is limitless, and there comes a time where a reasonable boundary must be created. And Councillor Dan said about parental responsibility and other things. We can just go on and on. So I think deferring it, but we're obviously not rejecting it or something in a certain way, but I think we're considering it very carefully.
I mean, it's got remedy the defects in formal past surfaces. We've no idea how huge a task that is.
Another point as well, they review all formal past surfaces. This should include the removal of trip hazards. Well, one of those trip hazards could be a tree root. So what do we propose? Chopping down trees and cutting out roots. I think the measures we've got down at Baptist Friends at the moment are good. I remember on this committee arguing for a buoy to be placed by the stepping stones and also signage. I think that's good. But for instance, where we do have things like signage and buoys, in places around the world, you have these signage, you have these things, and people still do ignore them, and it's quite obvious. If you put a sign saying, "Do not walk into this area, you are at risk," I don't see how much more the town council can do. We can always say we have got a sign that clearly says you are at risk from doing this, unless it's covered by foliage. Then I suppose the point, then we would be liable because we haven't well maintained the visibility of that sign, or perhaps the visibility of a buoy that's by the water. So I think what we've got in place is good, and some of these more than the ones I said, like Councillors Weaver and Dan have gone on about. We could be here all day. What next? Putting fences around stinging nettles because people are going to get stung. So I think it's a never-ending thing. These kind of things.
Unfortunately, we live in a litigious society. That's the trouble. Years ago, this probably would have mattered, but nowadays, help get away.
Yes, or even worse, we live in a society when it's always somebody else's fault.
Yeah. I mean, I don't disagree what's been said, but we need, at some point, we need to protect the town council, because if we don't, presumably we've got insurance cover, public liability cover. I mean, if you go on, if somebody makes a claim against us, we like to try to claim against that insurance, and then somebody says, oh well, you've got a report from the Royal Society for the Prevention of Accidents, and you didn't act on it. Bang, lost. We're not paying the claim. That's the other extreme. Now, I would imagine that we'd be just looking at some of the high ones on here, and we've got to do some kind of 80-20 rule, that sort of thing, get the most.
No, just to say, we've got to look at it. We've got to show reasonable due care and attention to things, and not be negligent. So these are the key things: reasonable care, and also we mustn't be negligent. So those are the sort of routes to take, I think.
Did you say anything else? No. Any other comments? Okay, well, let's defer this one then, as discussed, and we'll try and reach a decision at the next meeting, having looked into the matters raised and some costings of some things that we're looking to do. Okay. Right, on to the next one. Environmental Information Regulations, which starts on page 57. Take us through this one.
Yes, you'll be aware, Chair, that we're in the process of making sure our policies and procedures are reviewed and updated as part of the progress we're making an application for the local council award scheme, and this is one that was due for a refresh. The committee is asked to approve the policy and procedure.
Any comments on this one? Particularly controversial. I think what council should bear in mind is that the legislative background under which we operate is constantly changing. Stuff gets introduced. In my portfolio district, we've got something called Homelessness Prevention Act, which imposes a load more requirements on us, and there's really no option but to comply with these things.
Actually, just because you've made that point, I'd like to say, obviously, Emma's pointed out that actually we need to do this for the local council awards scheme. I suppose I'm a little disappointed we're doing it for an award and prize as opposed to this is just good council policy.
Actually, it was a policy we already had in place and it needed a refresh.
Exactly, yeah.
So,
So, and it is legislation. I think it's only a good thing that we put our information that we should out there for everyone to see. Yeah, so I don't think we should do it just for a little gold award. I think we should do it in the interest of...
Yes, I think it's incidental.
Yes.
To that. Yeah. Okay, so are we okay with the recommendation?
Yes.
All in favour? Thank you. Right. Page 63, volunteering portal. Any comments on this one? Yeah.
Wow, is all I can say. This is massive change to the way the council runs at the moment. I can only assume. And the cost of this is going to be met by existing budgets. I have no idea how that's possible when this year we asked for an increase in our precept because the allotment clubs wanted, I think, less than £1,000 between them per year, additional grant. This is going to cost thousands and thousands of pounds. If I pick out one thing I can think of is the volunteers, the Harpenden and Bloom volunteers, that all help plant on planting days. We're now going to provide all the equipment for them and supervision and training. That's just probably the smallest part of the volunteering for this town. Do we stop at the allotments, for instance? I know they're deemed to have an agreement with the town council, but how do you draw the line between organisations like that? Do we then provide all the training, supervision, the equipment? Because the grant in no way covers all of those things for the allotment club. They're just some of the things I know about. I just don't know how this could be met out of the existing budget. I don't disagree with any of it. I think it's fantastic in theory, and I think volunteers do not get enough support, praise, acknowledgement. I really don't. But I just don't know how it's viable.
I don't think the allotment clubs are volunteers.
No, I'm sure that would be treated differently because of the way the management agreement is set up. But even Harpenden and Bloom is a very small part of it. But who would be training? Who would be supervising? Who would be providing tools on that?
What are you going to train them to do? How to plant a plant?
That's such a small part of the volunteers that work for the council that I just think the cost of this is going to be enormous.
This was mainly aimed at the volunteers who work on the commons, isn't it?
yes, predominantly aimed at volunteers, and we already have a lot of the equipment when it comes to the work that they undertake on the common and at backspace.
I'm not quite sure how to achieve it, but I would suggest, therefore, that this does somehow need a certain amount of refinement. Otherwise, yes, literally it could be, we trod down the war memorials of plants, and we're all standing there waiting to be handed our trowels and our kneelers, taught how to plant a plant and everything else. So I think it does need perhaps a bit of tweaking.
Yes, I think it's coming back to almost to the nanny state business, links back to that sort of thing. Are we going too far here? I mean, there's one big thing we've got to cover ourselves, and that's insurance. But I think if you start detailing it, where again do you end? It's going to go on and on. This is, it's so detailed, and I agree with Deb here that this is, it's doing too much. I think it could cost us a lot of money.
But perhaps as one suggestion, because I can see why you need quite a lot of this in respect of the common, where you're doing jobs that you do, or potentially doing jobs where you do need training and so on. So maybe it's in fact, you need perhaps rather than have one catch-all policy, you perhaps need a policy that covers things like...
A light touch policy.
Perhaps you define volunteers in stages.
Yes.
So this applies to people
But
on the course to start with.
seek to find some formula that it does take in account particularly volunteers who are working up at Bedford Springs and on the Common, because I can see, I mean, for instance, they will be, or both presumably, for instance, they will be using equipment that you do need training in how to use it, and I can see the sense of that.
Okay. Dan?
Yeah, I mean, perhaps I'm missing something, but I think, I think perhaps we could make more of acknowledging and honouring the work that volunteers do, particularly on the Common and in Bedford Springs. I think they're the mainstay of the project work that goes on. And, I know they arrive very early in the morning and frequently work, a whole day or a couple of days' work. We already provide the equipment. We provide the supervision, management and support, and we have the insurance. Perhaps I'm missing something, but isn't having this big policy just paperwork for its own sake?
Yes.
I've also noted page 65, 3C, the middle point. We'll ensure all volunteers are treated as a co-worker and not just free help. All volunteers are free help. They don't get paid.
They're volunteers.
Yeah, obviously, yes, we want them to be free to make a suggestion in respect of their views and opinions. But in terms of just the nitpicking of the wording, I think we could change that around, because they're not co-workers, because they don't get paid, and they are just free help because they're volunteers. That's the definition of a volunteer. And I think we've got to be very careful in terms of we're mixing the voluntary sector with the public sector here. We've got to be very careful there.
I think certainly that's absolutely true for HR reasons and legal reasons. Councillor Gillam's 100% correct. We are in big danger of merging or conflating voluntary and public sector. What I'd like to propose actually is that we send this back and say no thank you very much, but could we have a report that simply lays out a simple scheme for honouring and publicly acknowledging the work of volunteers both collectively and individually. Much more simple, and obviously any auditor or somebody looking into our procedures will know that we provide insurance and know that we have procedures for supervising volunteers, because we've been, am I meant to say used, is that a politically correct term? We've been utilising services of volunteers for over a decade.
And presumably somewhere, because there's a slight difference as well between policies and protocol. I don't know, but presumably what actually there should be is, particularly when you are doing things like work on the Common and Springs, and yes, you are doing some pretty heavy duty work and heavy duty equipment, but there probably ought to be protocols in place. That I would suggest. Well, some of the equipment, for instance, you do need to actually to cover that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll defer this one, have a rethink.
Okay.
Oh.
Right, moving on to page 67, Town Centre plots again. Some of them aren't in a very good state. Need repair, I think that's the
Well, this is something that the committee are requesting.
Yeah.
It's probably surfaced in some of the past. I think Councillor Weaver was reporting on the one across from Avonbury Lane,
Yes,
across Leighton Green to Leighton Road.
Chris, sorry.
I'm just slightly confused by 3.5 where it says that if an alternative surface other than tarmac is chosen, then there would be an obligation on the council to undertake the replacing of all paths in the town centre. And I don't really follow the logic of that one.
The suggestion was that we could look at different surfaces. So, for example, at the moment, all the paths in the town centre are tarmac. However, you'll notice that the path that was on the corner of Leighton Road is actually installed by Highways, and that's resin. So if members didn't want to replace like for like with the path that they're going to prioritise, and they wanted a quotation for a resin surface to be obtained instead, then there may be a nominally with the other paths that are quite safe and sound, and you'll have a bit of a mismatch. So it was suggested that we replace like for like, and if we wanted to look at another surface, then we may look at resurfacing all of them so that they're all the same.
Over a period of time.
Over a period of time, yeah. This is obviously a 3-year project, this particular budget item.
After you.
We might be about to say the same thing. I suppose the answer to that is, I mean, I don't pretend I know, because if the county prefer to use resin, what the advantages and disadvantages are between each type of surface. Because if, for instance, the resin surface is going to have a longer lifetime or less repairs, etc., it's cheaper. It's would it consider which
Councillor Farmer won't recall because obviously she's here in an ex officio capacity, but when we were considering the concourse repairs,
we did go for resin.
We went for resin.
I did recall
route encroachment.
Yes, I did recall that we went for resin on the common.
And I think
not on the common, on the concourse. Yeah.
And I think that was why I wasn't involved in the decision behind the corner of Lake Road, but I think that's why they put resin on that in that instance as well.
Within my district portfolio, Mr. Chairman, I've got experience of using resin, and I'll say this, it's more durable when you've got the problem with roots. It's less likely to crack up and pop up, and it looks great. It's quite nice stuff compared to asphalt. However, as fabulously wonderful as it is, it's also fabulously expensive compared to asphalt, and it would clash with what we've already got there. And I think what Mrs. Payne was saying is absolutely true. We would eventually then have to replace every path with resin, which, temptation of snide comments there about money already spent this evening, but I don't think we have enough money to replace every single path and pavement in Harpenden with resin. So I say go for like and get on with it, because they look pretty awful at the moment.
Yeah. What are the relative costs? Can you remember?
God, per square inch, no, but you're talking about 30% more at least.
We went for it for reasons on the concourse, but it was quite expensive.
There was some other involved. That resin tech.
Yeah, I know it wasn't quite straight. I know it wasn't totally straightforward, but it cost a fair bit of money.
Yeah, I really don't think we should be replacing all paths just because we start doing one in a different material like that. Just seems crazy. I would agree. We just use tarmac again.
Okay. But it looks fine.
Okay. Well, are we happy with the recommendation that paths to be roofed surface, which is given here, and to devolve to the chairman of the committee and the town clerk the evaluation of quotations for the works to be undertaken?
Can I just ask? Oh, sorry. Are we having them? We wanted them slightly widened, didn't we?
Yes.
It just says resurface, but
they'll be widened as well.
No, I was voting.
Okay. So can we take all in favour of the recommendation? Thank you very much. Okay. On to 71, event protocol. Basically, the idea of this, I think, is a protocol rather than a policy to deal with people like the circuitous and things like that who are conducting events on Harpenden Town Council land. Any comments on this one?
No, not really, Chairman.
Sorry, just it does actually say that point 3.13 the protocol doesn't cover sales and services.
That's the most thing.
So I don't know why they're being treated differently.
Does that cover? So what does this cover?
This covers things like
Plastics on the
Plastics on the common.
the parking for the Highland Gathering, the Salvation Army who had their fair last weekend on Mason Green, Larks in the Parks at Batford, and other community organisations.
Okay, so do we have separate policies then, or separate protocols for
Yes,
fairs,
we do.
services and
This is
markets?
the charge, yes.
Okay.
So that's why I suggested protocols and volunteers rather than
Yeah.
policy.
Okay. Any comments?
St Albans, wasn't it?
Yes,
Yes.
I think so.
Yeah.
Yes.
Remarkable.
Any other comments, observations, or can I go to the recommendation? Council is asked to approve the new protocol which is set out at Appendix A. In favour? Almost at the end. Right, to page 91. Plan to replant some central bedding area in Dideca or Lideca, as it's pronounced from.
We never know.
Well, it's Lidica. It's Lidica. Yes, Lidica. Yes, it's the
Right,
general.
yeah, right, okay.
A bit like 23 for
Park off Sun Lane.
Well,
Yep, thank
I was just going to say, I thought this conceptually being that central planting bit is looking a bit dull and dreary and then tired and in need of some refreshment.
First, I councillor, no.
I was just going to say, I think it's unfortunate if we're going to be using annuals for quite a large area. I mean, I know we're keeping some shrubs and the yews, but I would support more use of perennials.
Yes.
Yes, I wasn't really so much going on the types of plants.
I'm very sorry.
Well, I wasn't, no, I didn't feel it out. I'm just saying it could do with some,
Oh, definitely. Yeah,
it could do with a bit of tender loving care.
It could. So I would prefer perennials if possible, with some inclusion of annuals,
Yeah.
but not predominantly.
you. Dan?
Certainly the circular U-beds looked absolutely amazing. Possibly a decade ago, and certainly when that plant was new, it was fantastic, very bright place to be, but it has been looking dreary lately, so I'd say that, yes, it seems like a slightly alarming amount of money. I'm not horticulture up on these things, but that said, it also needs a lot of TLC, so I think we should do this.
Okay.
I was just going to say, yes, I'm quite happy with perennials. In fact, because you can get them very nice perennials.
So what does our gardening expert say?
Totally agree. I couldn't agree more with Councillor
Sorry, what were you agreeing with?
The use of perennials
Use
instead of
of
just
what?
annuals.
More perennials.
Definitely, yeah.
Mm.
For a longer flowering period.
Yes.
Yeah. Any particular perennials?
Or something, wouldn't it?
Would you like to have a look at
Hardy
that?
perennials. I'd like to have a look at that.
And I was also going to say on that, and I don't know if you'd agree with me, I don't actually think there's any particular reason why the colour scheme has to match the colour scheme down on the 1081. Because it's separate. I don't think that's necessary. I think it could be.
I think that's a suggestion
Yes.
from the Friends group, actually, that
Yeah.
they would like to
But-
see a tie-in with the
I
planting
don't-
stage throughout
okay, but I
Harpenden.
don't think that's essential, personally.
Any other comments? Okay, can we move to the recommendation 2.1? Recommend corporate policy and finance, release of the earmark reserve for 12,500. To add the area into Harpenden Town Council floral display contract going forward, increasing the budget by 2.96 to allow for, what the 96 is for, to allow for annual maintenance of planting.
Yes, and it may come in at a little less if we have some perennial.
Yes.
A bit more expensive to start with.
But then
Yes.
we'll, yes.
Ongoing.
Okay. Are we all in favour of that recommendation?
Are we mentioning perennials?
Yeah,
Can we
I've
put
got
that
one
in?
made a note here and
Yes.
we'll put that in.
Just going to stick a few annuals in as well. Oh, yeah, jolly long.
Okay, I think that's... Thank you very much. Close the meeting at